9:32, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Rosie.
Let's take a look at today's front pages and start with the Express. I'll save the high street, says Rishi Sunak. Well, the PM hopeful vows to help shops thrive, punish hooligans and stop banks closing cash machines.
In the Sunday Times for you this morning, Liz Truss proclaiming herself the Education Prime Minister, amongst other things promising an Oxbridge interview for every A-star pupil.
You could receive a £10 fine, as we've been discussing, for an NHS no-show, according to the Sunday Telegraph. It's an attempt to improve the availability of GPs, a policy promise from Rishi Sunak. He says if you miss 2 consecutive appointments without a reasonable excuse, you'll be fined.
For the Independent, Britons want whoever wins the keys to number 10 to face a general election, it says.
Prince Charles's judgment's been questioned, according to the Mail on Sunday. One of his charities received £1 million from the family of the 9/11 terrorist Osama bin Laden.
Come on, you lionesses, says the Sunday People, backing England's women team to beat the Germans in the Euros final tonight.
Hot as hell. The Sunday Star says this sizzling summer is going to last until Halloween.
Ooh, very nice too. Let's discuss some of those then with political commentator Andre Walker and anthropologist Marianne Hotter. Morning both.
Good morning.
Marianne, let's go for a dip.
Yes, well, for now, in the summer, but obviously massive increases in energy prices set to hit many of us in autumn. Lots of domestic consumers are going to be protected, that's a qualified word, by these price caps, but organisations like schools and public swimming baths will not be, and so obviously heating schools, a lot of them are older buildings, not necessarily energy efficient. Nonetheless, you've got a massive school, you need to keep it warm for the kids and the teachers. Swimming pools need to be warm. It looks like, for example, Tadcaster Pool, they've estimated that their current energy bill, which is about £90,000, is going to go up to £550,000, which is unsurvivable for them.
Yeah.
And lots of organisations that represent public swimming pools, community pools, just saying there is no help from the government and we are going to have to close because we've already dipped into reserves. We've already done all the energy efficiency work that we can afford to do to try and minimise costs and minimise, the heat going out through the roof or whatnot. You've got, I knew I should have got my highlighter pen out, shouldn't I? I can't find it now. Basically, that's it. So UK Active, a not-for-profit body that represents 4,000 private and publicly owned swimming pools, gyms and leisure facilities, predict that, wait for it, 79% of swimming pools could close in the next 6 months.
Why aren't they protected by the price cap?
Because that's only for domestic households.
Well, you should bring it
Well,
on that umbrella,
so the government, the government should or could say, we're gonna either give you some kind of money off your bill or offer some kind of preferential tariff. But the thing is, there's lots of other organisations. Why would a care home say, well, hang on a minute, we have to pay energy bills and we're looking after old people who need to be kept warm? And the thing is,
they've got these companies are making a lot of profit.
Well, that's the thing. Many of the swimming pools are not for profit.
Yeah, no, not these lot. I mean the energy companies.
Oh, yeah.
Energy companies. So price cap across the board.
That's not very Tory of you.
Well, I think it's fair. It's keeping things going. I'm not a Tory.
Oh.
I'm an independent as a journalist.
Oh, there we go. Fair enough.
I'm not a member of any political party.
No, fair enough. It's very. It's an interesting point. I mean, they're still having to pay VAT on swimming lessons. Swimming lessons are like a life-saving life skill.
Always. The problem is, and look, I absolutely do not disagree with any of the comments about the cost of heating swimming pools. Small local authorities are taken to pieces by swimming pools all the time because of the financial cost of running them. But the reality is, the reason for all of this is our mad energy policy, which is pushing up bills, which is forcing Granny to decide whether to heat or eat.
Why is it a policy that's doing that?
Because we're paying for extremely expensive green energy. Right? Let me just say something to you.
Hold on a minute. What's driving up the cost is the market economy.
A failure of
the market economy, which is meaning companies like Centrica are able, because of the market economy, to charge more and more and more per unit of gas.
Yeah, but look, if you restrict supply massively by mad green policies, then what happens?
No, what you're doing is
the price. Hang on a second.
having
The reality is about this.
Russia is.
The reality is we are moving towards the German model where they have 50% green energy but 50% fossil fuels. The prices for energy is twice that of France to domestic users who've got 93% green energy and 7% fossil fuels because they've moved to nuclear. So what we are going to do is put windmills all over the countryside, push up bills, and this will be the result.
Joe, we were talking earlier in the week about people messaging in saying, I can't pay my bills at home, but I'm going to my gym or my public swimming pool and I'm showering there.
Oh, interesting.
Which is back to the Victorian era.
But,
Yeah.
no, but this will put the kibosh on that, won't it, you see?
Well, that's it. And again, I mean, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about the high street. And again, you've got more community amenities that are really feeling the squeeze. And there's a certain point at which there won't be much left. And it's much harder to bring those institutions, bring those organisations back to life if they've had a period of dormancy. And you've got whole generations that are missing out. And as always, the story that the Mirror actually leads with is, oh, it's one pool for the Rishi, because Rishi Sunak is building a private pool in his own private house. Meanwhile, up the road, the public swimming pool is facing possible closure. And I mean, it's a bit of a crude tool to beat him around the head with, to be fair. But the kind of the point they're making, that if you're wealthy, you will still be able to send your kids to swimming pools because the private pool or the kind of the nice gym, day spa place that you can go to will be available. It's everybody else who misses out, and they miss out on everything time and time again. It doubles up the inequality.
Yeah.
I mean, so much for levelling up.
Well, pools are vital. We need to get all children to know how to swim.
And also,
That is vital.
pools are super important for old people or people with disabilities, mobility issues, because you can exercise in water in a way that you're not necessarily going to want to run on a treadmill or something like that.
Yes, I say for some severely disabled people, again, they're crucial.
Absolutely, yeah.
Shall we look at a party that's happened over the weekend?
Partygate or
In
party?
the Sun, Boris Johnson finally had his wedding party 14 months on. What details do we know?
Well, the wedding dress apparently was designed by Savannah Miller, the sister of Sienna Miller, and it was worth £3,500. But they rented it for £25, which I have to say I think is a great idea. This whole idea of rather than buying some really expensive item that you
Was it
rent
a wedding dress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a picture of it on the front page. Well, I don't know. Just hold it up. What do you think?
Well,
But that was-
Carrie
but
has
she-
rented dresses before.
Well, I don't know. Apparently, the wedding dress cost an absolute fortune. But
Well, she had a wedding dress for when she actually got married. So she got another wedding dress.
I warn you that I'm not an expert on wedding dresses, but the point I was going to make about this actually is more the criticism in various newspapers that Boris Johnson is not doing his job at the moment. He's been out with the RAF in fighter planes, he's been off training Ukrainian soldiers, he's had a party for his wedding, which, okay, fair enough, but I just don't want... I like Boris Johnson, I think he's pretty good, but I just don't want him to spend the rest of his time in office bluntly mucking about and enjoying the baubles when we are facing an energy crisis, when we are facing a cost of living crisis, and when there is a war in Ukraine.
If he hadn't been booted out, no one would be batting an eyelid at this. It would just be like, they're on the summer break, he's got an eye on what's going on, but this is a bit of downtime. No one would care.
I get that, but Boris has always been accused of being a bit too much of someone who loves the baubles and not enough of doing the work. Look, I support him. But I do think there is a risk. I don't particularly like this whole idea, this American thing, of having lame duck leaders. I'm quite keen on the whole general election. You're out immediately. That's the end of it. I think it just makes it easier in this respect.
There were some calls, Martin Lewis, for example, saying what we should do is get Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak in a room immediately to come up with some solutions to what we've just been talking about, the previous story, cost of living. Can you actually see something like that happening?
No, and I don't think it's a serious suggestion. I mean, I understand the principle behind it, but it's like the handover between American presidents. The reality is, somebody wants to come in and do their own thing. you know, you've got all these sorts of Downing Street staff and whatever, they'll all be moved on and replaced with whoever the new Prime Minister's people are. And so I just think that, this is the dying days of this government. The other problem you often have, by the way, is people just walking out, because all the private sector job offers will now be coming to Downing Street people, those people that are worthy of offers, and you know, you may see the place a little bit like the Marie Celeste by the 1st of September.
Can we have a look? Because you're very knowledgeable about these things, if I may say so, and I don't know enough about them. The Elgin Marbles.
Ah, there we go. I was like,
Elgin
what is he
Marbles.
going to ask me about women's football? I was like, I don't know.
Because I mean, there's been all the controversy of the Elgin Marbles for decades and
Or the Parthenon frieze, if you will, if you don't want to give it its colonial imperialism.
Fair enough.
So the reason they're called the Elgin Marbles is because Lord Elgin bought them effectively in 1801. So they were this frieze, it's this incredible marble frieze, this carving that was up in the walls of the Parthenon in Greece. And under the Ottoman Empire, this chap turned up and went, "Can I have those?" And they went, "Yeah, help yourself." So he chiselled them out, logged them on a boat, took them back to the UK, and then gave them to the British Museum eventually. And they were a kind of a gem of the nation, and they've been on display to the public. You can go and visit them for free in London. However, I think quite rightly, Greece have gone, you weren't ever actually allowed to take that because the person you asked had invaded our country, so it doesn't really count. Please give them back. They belong to us. And the British Museum have said, well, we'd loan them to you if you acknowledge that we own them. And understandably, Greece have gone, no, because that's not true. So they've been in this standoff for a long time. And then there were all these different arguments saying, well, they can't go back to the Parthenon because there's nowhere proper to save them. You should see the stuff that was left there. It's all eroded and corroded and chipped and blah, 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 blah. But look at the stuff in the British Museum. Isn't it shiny and clean? Haven't we looked after it well? That's because we're the best people to look after it. And all of the, you know, international heritage. Anyway, thankfully, we are possibly past this stalemate, and there's hope now of a new Parthenon partnership whereby the Elgin Marbles the Parthenon frieze will go back to Greece, probably where it should have been for quite.
I think
I would agree with that.
I have to say something. So I'm half Greek, half Irish, because my dad, believe it or not, my dad's the only Greek called Sam Walker. Can you believe that? But he is actually from Athens, and so. Look, I think we have to have sympathy for both sides here. You know, it is a significant part of the British Empire. They've displayed it beautifully for 200 years. That when they were purchased, the Acropolis was falling apart and had been badly neglected, partly because of the political situation in Greece at the time. This idea were effectively, you know, they will shoot between various museums around the world, I think is probably quite a sensible idea. I don't think anybody particularly cares about the ownership, so to speak. I think it's much more about the fact that people don't have access to them who are Greek unless they want to fly to London. Now, I'm not being funny. If you're a Greek schoolchild, to see your finest cultural items, you have to get on a plane. I don't think it's wholly acceptable.
I mean, it's an interesting argument of whether someone who lives in modern Greece in 2022 has a kind of a heritage and ancestry-based claim to the 2,500-year-old Parthenon, you know, carvings, or whether I have as much claim. My mum's Indian, my dad's Polish, or whether it's actually a kind of a nationalist claim, or whether actually it's a writing of a historical inequality where basically you can go to the British Museum, walk around loads and loads of rooms, and go, oh look, yeah. Britain stole a lot of stuff from a lot of people around the world, and that needs to be addressed.
And I think
you can't just kind of go, this is a wonderland.
I think that's the critical problem, isn't it? It's what constitutes theft and what constitutes purchasing when a lot of these antiquities were just not valued particularly highly at the time by the people who technically owned them.
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, like Benin bronzes, for example, are still in London and really ought to go back to Benin.
I do sort of think there is. I can understand it was times gone by, things were taken, and yes, we've looked after them. I get all of that. But I do think it is probably time in a modern world where things go back to where they.
But actually, Stephen, I think this is the crux of this proposal. The reality is, museums nowadays move things across the world and loan them to each other all the time. And actually, this concept of something being just fixed in one place, I just don't think needs to be the case anymore. Therefore, I think this idea. By the way, the Greeks are proposing to this is important. Proposing to loan the British Museum some items back that have never been on display in Britain. So I think that to me sounds eminently sensible.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, I mean, I've just been to Rome, and the stuff you see in Rome is absolutely mind-blowing. But you don't want to go to the Parthenon and say, well, this bit of the Parthenon was lovely, but it's now on display in New York.
Well, they've got this extraordinary place where there's kind of blank spaces that are perfectly designed. It's got the ambient temperature, it's got humidity sensors, it is ready, and they're like, we would put it here, except those folk in London still have it and aren't giving it back, even though it should be here. So there's no excuse now. It just needs to happen.
I wonder though, if you, I put this out, I don't know what the answer is, but if you were the Greek government and the British Museum loaned you the Elgin marbles, I wonder whether you wouldn't just say, I'm sorry, they're just not flying back to London.
Well, they shouldn't get loaned. They should be handed back.
Yeah.
There's a really good book, if people want to read it. It's by Dan Hicks. It's called The Brutish Museums. Brutish Museums.
Yeah.
Really good. It's a mind blower.
It's-
You go,
yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting point, and you've got to be responsible about these things. Andre, Mary Ann, we're done with you for now. Don't go anywhere
Thank
because
you.
we'll see you in an hour.